Okay, welcome to episode 5 of Connect, Inspire, Share. This is our final Connect, Inspire, Share session for the year before we have our symposium in December, which I'll talk more about at the end of this. But this one is a really special one. It's great because a key part of what we do as academic skills advisors or language and learning advisors, whatever you call it in your institution, is of course student facing and working with students. They're the key reason we exist and why we're here. And we have 5 of them here this afternoon. And before I get them to introduce themselves, I will have our acknowledgement of country. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands in which we are on today. We pay respect to elders past, present, and future, and acknowledge the importance of Indigenous knowledge in the Academy. I'm speaking to you from the land of the Boonwurrung and the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung peoples of the Kulin Nation. And please feel free to tell us in chat where you are joining us from today. So, with that, I'm going to turn to the 5 wonderful students we have and get them to deliver a brief oratory, who you are, what institution you're from, what you're studying, and just anything you want to tell us briefly about yourself before we launch into some of the key questions I have for you. Wesley, because you're filling up my screen for some reason, I'm going to ask you
I'm
first.
sorry, I don't know what, because I
No, no,
changed
I
it.
don't know what that is. Go ahead, Wesley, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Um, I'm 64. I am Indigenous. I'm in the Gadigal Centre actually, that with my faux Banksy. Um, I went back to school because I had a stroke, and I walk with limp. And I used to be a hair and makeup artist for like 40 years, and then but I have a brain that didn't get fried in the stroke, so I sat the exams and got back in.
Excellent.
Hmm.
And what are you studying, Wesley? What are you working on at the moment?
Started in socio-legal, right? And then I just hated going to court. Then I changed to creative writing, academic writing, and sociology, which is what I'm doing right now. Next year, I'm changing the whole degree to political economics, the new degree that Sydney's put on. It's only you can only do it here for some reason. And so I'm doing that. But I want to be a writer. I'm studying all these things that my writing can be based on fact. You
Yeah,
know.
excellent. All right, brilliant. I'm just sorry, I'm just manipulating the uh, screen share. Okay, Katie, how about you? Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Everyone, can you hear me now?
Yep, yep.
Yeah, great. Hi, I'm Katie. I'm in Perth studying at ECU, doing a Bachelor of Criminology and Justice. Previously was enrolled in a Bachelor of Social Work. Decided to change degrees earlier this year as I just found the criminal justice system fascinating. Um, yeah, it aligns with my values. I guess I'm passionate for social change and studies are going well. I'm working through some difficult topics at the moment, but I'm finding that, yeah, the skills that I'm learning and reflecting, helping me personally, and yeah, making sort of meaningful connections. So I'm starting to pay more attention to the topics that I really love, and then take note of those that I don't love so much so I can find where I want to go.
That's a great way to do it. Perfect. It's a good way to funnel down to the things you really like doing. That's great. Thanks, Katie. I'm just going by the order that I've got in front of me here. I've actually started from the bottom, I see. Uh, Cortina, how about you?
Hi, my name's Cortina McCurry. So I'm currently studying a graduate diploma in psychology at the University of Melbourne. This is my first year, and I'm studying that with in pursuit of a master's in clinical psychology. My background is in neuroscience, so this is kind of a way to round things out for me and clinical practice. And so far, it's going well, but there's been a bit of a learning curve, I'd say. But overall, very good.
Yeah, great. I actually worked with Cortina a couple of times on academic writing, so that's why I invited her to be in to this because I know she's got some things she is learning about in terms of changing academic writing style, and so I'll be very interested to hear about some of those things. Thanks, Cortina. Carly.
Hello, I'm
Hi.
Carly. I'm 20, well, I'm turning 28 soon. I'm from Adelaide and I go to the University of South Australia. I'm doing a Bachelor of Arts, which offers a double major of your choice. So I'm doing creative writing and performing arts with a minor in screen studies. And yes, I think I've got 3 weeks left before I graduate. So very excited. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Brilliant. That's great. Okay. You said Uni SA, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, great. Thanks, Carly. Okay, and lucky last, Sally.
Hi, I'm Sally. I am, like Carly, about 3 weeks off finishing my honours program at the University of New England. I've done a Bachelor of Social Science majoring in organisation management, and I'm in my 8th year because I've been doing it part-time while working.
Excellent. Okay, what are you working as?
I have been the CEO of a disability representative organisation, Blind Citizens Australia. I'm now the policy manager at Disability Employment Australia, just while I finish off my study.
Manager and policy manager, and you are studying part-time. Good. You're doing really well. That's great. Good to hear. Thanks, Sally. Okay, so that leads me to my first question, sort of this thing around being successful at university. And the first thing I'd like to ask you all, and Sally, I'll keep you on and you can be the first cab off the rank. What we'd love to know is about what things have worked or are working for you in terms of helping you to be a successful student. So, what enablers of success do you find have worked? And they could be things like forming a study group or having a study buddy or making sure you communicate with teaching staff, whatever. So, what's worked? Why does it work? And how have you come to this? How have you worked that out? Has it been just through experience? Has it been because someone like an academic skills advisor told you? I'd love to hear about success enabling.
Yeah, I think for me, what has really enabled my success is being able to approach and have some really open conversations with teaching staff around what my access needs are and how I can still meet the inherent requirements of the course, but in a way that also works for me. So I'm blind and neurodivergent, which means that some of the things they just don't work. So I've had some really good experience with teaching staff and just being able to say, hey, this is my situation. These are some areas where I might anticipate some difficulties. Can we talk about these in advance so that before I get to that point, we both know what might happen and what we can do about it, just to try and reduce the amount of stress at the time. So that's been a big part of it. And I think the second thing is when I have connected with academic skills office staff is being able to find people that are quite confident and comfortable to work in a way that meets my needs. So say we've been screen sharing and they might be like, oh, and over here and the red thing and the blue thing, where I'm like, okay, can we talk about this like the clock face? Can you tell me if it's at 12 o'clock or 3 o'clock, just so I can orientate myself and find it and we can both get out of it what we need.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, okay. Did you, as a follow-up question, when you approach staff for some pre sort of setting of how you'd like to work with them, did you find them receptive to that?
Almost all of the time. I think in my early years of studying, I was incredibly nervous and apprehensive. So I had a little bit of learning to do on my end, that we're all just people at the end of the day. But once I sort of built that confidence and I had some good experiences that I could learn from and continue to build on, almost all of the time people were really receptive, yes.
Oh, that's great to hear. That's really good. Okay, Katie, how about you? Success enablers.
Okay, so I guess for myself, I'm a bit of a planner, so I like to have all the information I can as early as possible. I'm definitely not somebody that can do the last minute scram, put it together. So for me, I guess the more information that I have in advance, then I can sort of read, assess, work out what I understand about my assignments, what I don't. I'm a frequent user of our academic drop-in skills. They have workshops on my campus. So I find that they're very good for quick questions and things that I can check in on. However, because I'm neurodivergent, sometimes they're a little bit like, just do this, like answer the question. And I've found that I'm like, well, I kind of start really broad and then I have to hone it in. So I've found the one-on-one sessions that we can do with a senior learning advisor on my campus really helpful. She really supports my learning with, like, I can have hundreds of tabs open. I have all my different color coding and systems, and she gives me suggestions on what works for me, rather, because one of the things that I've found is it's not that I don't understand the content, it's that putting it across in a way that displays that or making it easier for my marker to follow my train of thought has been a real struggle for me with my academic writing. And then I get disappointed sort of in the marks that I get, because I'm like, oh, but I spent hours on this and I loved the topic. But it's been more about honing that skill and how to demonstrate that. So
And did you have to make those preferences or ways of working clear to the advisor, or did they intuit them, or how did that
I
work?
think I did. Initially in my studies, I was very much trying to, follow the general path, but I have a learning access plan. And when I started to reach out, sorry, to specify help for
S-
myself,
Sorry, Katie, can I
that's
just
when,
break in?
sorry,
Um,
sorry, sorry.
Kate, I think it's
Yep.
Kate. Can you mute, please? You're coming through with noise. Great. Okay, sorry, Katie, keep going.
You're right. So I had to find a specific person that was a senior learning advisor and then provide a copy of my lap plan. And then after I did that, I was sort of linked in with somebody who just got it. And then it was easy. So it was a bit of navigating to find the right person to get in front of. But that once I've done that, it's just been amazing.
Excellent. It's great to hear two sort of positive stories straight up about working with university staff, from Sally talking about teaching staff and Katie, you talking about advising staff. So I think we're all sort of like to hear that the staff are receptive to helping students with any needs, of course, but with extra needs, of course, there becomes extra things we need to think about. Great. Okay, Cortina, how about you? What success has looked like for you coming from a US system, perhaps to the Australian system?
I think probably success has been having a translator, and also, and specifically that translator is Steve. To be very explicit,
This is what this
because
means.
because I did find coming in, this could be unique to the psychology department at University of Melbourne. It's quite large. And I have one of the things I found early on that I was surprised by is that there wasn't as much access to professors, lecturers, and teaching staff as I had anticipated. And then through the tutors, just by virtue of, I think, just trying to manage the sheer number of questions, a lot of the tutors were kind of given materials to share with us. But in terms of being able to answer questions, they weren't really a resource for that as well. So when it came to, and it took me a while to actually understand this, because I would ask questions and I wasn't getting answers. And then I'd ask more explicitly, and then I still wasn't getting an answer. And finally, what I was told was, we're actually not meant to give you answers, because for us to give you an answer would then to give you an unfair advantage to the other students who didn't have the chance to ask the same question. Mm-hmm. So I've actually now since found TAs who take that guidance, and they are quite firm with it. So they won't work with you. But I actually have TAs who are a little bit more flexible. And what they'll do, and it works quite well in this need to actually control the narrative to a certain extent, because you don't want to have different answers going around, because that can cause confusion. So I get it. Is if I do ask a question, what they'll do is they'll then just share it with the question I asked and the answer to the entire class. And when they don't know the answer, they'll go back to the teaching staff to get the correct answer verified by the teaching staff, and then give it to us. So I think there's a way to get around it. So that context, I think, is necessary just to understand why I initially went to academic skills, and I was so happy to have been able to interact with you, Steve, because I was able to share what it was that I was working on, and be able to understand exactly what the expectations were. Here's what the person's looking for. Original thinking isn't on the rubric. Like, I came from a background where my education would have looked for creativity, original thinking when it came to writing lab reports or writing papers. However, in a system where there's time pressures, there's constraints, TAs are being paid based off the number of words that they're assessing. Many of them might not have the skills to actually be able to think critically about what it is you're putting in front of them. It's got to map to, here's the rubric, here's what we're expecting, and then say it as plainly as possible. And I think you've been really helpful for me, Steve, in that regard, which is, how do I make my writing as clear, as succinct as possible, And I think one thing you said that always stuck with me is kind of in our American culture, I was always taught you can kind of state your ideas and then you kind of expect the person to then think about your ideas and reflect on them and then continue reading. But what I have found works really well in this system, and I hope I'm stating it, but this is the way I'd interpret it, is say what I think, explain this is why this is what I think, and then explain again why this is what I think, and then give the evidence, and then explain it again. I have now started doing that. I only get H1s on every single assignment. It works. So I found that really helpful, but I wasn't able to get that from anyone else because they thought when I was asking for questions on how I could become a better writer or what it was they were looking for, they thought I was trying to get an advantage over others. But I was really just wanted to know what are your expectations?
Yeah.
How do I make sure that my thoughts are being conveyed to you as clearly as possible?
It's
So
so
that's really helped wonders. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so really, really happy to hear that, and it's been fantastic. Isn't it so interesting that, an English language culture and an English language culture and the systems and expectations can really differ like that, and you found that quite a study cultural change, right? That's clearly been something you've had to adjust to.
It's been a massive adjustment, but it also helps from the perspective of studying because not only am I getting like through working with you, I found getting that template for what's expected. But then now what I do is from the very beginning, I actually now use you as well as a forcing mechanism to get a draft together earlier than I might have otherwise. So that actually I think is beneficial. And then I've since shared some of the tips that you've given me with other students who didn't realize what was available through academic skills. And now they've gone to you as well, and they've had incredible results. So I think there's a bit of word of mouth that's really important from students because I just, until someone had told me you have to go to academic skills, I thought, oh, I've got so much on. Is it really that good? The barrier was a belief that the quality might not be what I needed.
Yeah.
But what I found is it's fabulous. It's worth the time in gold. Yeah. So I think hearing that from another student was quite beneficial.
Excellent. And for the other 63 people in the room, I didn't invite Cortina on to pump up my tires. That wasn't the intention. But she is a person who listens. So it's the type of profile of student we love to work with academic skills because there's things that need addressing. She listens and acts, and as advisors, it's all we can ask for. It's a great situation. So look, thank you for that. That's great. Thanks, Cortina. So how about Wesley?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Success enablers for you, Wesley. What's working?
Well, when I came back this year, I started in week 6 because I had pneumonia, which was fun, and it nearly killed me, right? And so I sort of dragged myself in after I was better. In the Learning Hub, which I don't know what you call it at Melbourne, do you know the Learning Hub here? It's and Liz Leeds and the director of the Category Centre, which is the Aboriginal Centre, set her up with me because I was so behind, and I ended up getting a high distinction for that just because of her, and just because talking about structure like that, Katrina was saying, drew me maps of an essay, and because I was really really unwell, and I got a high distinction. The university gave me a mentor for it, blah blah blah. So they treat you really well. They're not complaining at all. You know about that. Like I said, only got high distinctions so far. So
Brilliant. So you
through that,
found that the interaction with the academic skills center really helped you as well.
absolutely, and I help my friends with it too. Sort of somewhat Coutinho was saying. I said, well, you try doing it this way. It just simplifies it incredibly for me and works like a charm.
Right. So the simplification, the clarity idea that
Yeah,
resonated. All right.
yeah, just a plan.
Yeah, but it sort of gives you maybe that roadmap that may not have been there before, or that sense. I think Cortina, the word she kept using, and it resonates with me, is expectation. Is what are they expecting you to do? And that's what you've got to do.
Yeah, but she taught me how to break down a sentence, which sounds stupid. Like, what is this? And where, how do you, and then put down in parts and answer each part. Things like that. And it just worked really well.
Good.
And,
Oh,
and the
great.
Gallagher Center is because I'm disabled and because I was so sick when I started, I've just pulled out all the stops. Anything I need, they'll give it to me. They'll get it for me. It's wonderful. And I have hopefully paid them back by only getting distinctions. So it worked.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
Great. Good success story too. Ali, how about you? Enablers for you?
So I'd say I had a similar experience as probably what a lot of students have. Went to uni straight after high school, got burnt out, dropped out, had very poor grades, floated around for a few years, floated with joining the military. Thank God I didn't do that. And then eventually re-enrolled into UniSA and became like a straight HT student. And I think the difference was that I went into it with the goal of I just wanted to make a friend. I wanted to make friends. I didn't go into it with the goal, I'm going to work towards a job that's going to pay super well and it's going to be my career. Like the expectation of that when you start uni is kind of crazy because your frontal lobe hasn't even developed after you've left high school. And yet you're picking subjects for things you don't even know if you're going to like in 5 years or 6 years. So that breathing space was absolutely pivotal to me. And it also, that breathing space made me realize that I had a huge grudge with education from like growing up and not being very good at, lessons and spelling and English and grammar. And I think students really carry that grudge with them into classrooms and they don't even know it. And so when you have a student who just doesn't say anything like the whole semester, and you think, why aren't they engaging? Like they're failing this class. Why aren't they talking to anyone? There's learning advisors. We have so many services. Talking to learning advisors, I think it's because they have these wounds that have never been addressed, where once they were made to feel stupid in a classroom, and so they just don't speak anymore. And I think having that breathing room between dropping out the first time, re-enrolling, and now I'm going to graduate soon, it lets those wounds heal a little bit, which is nice. But also it just gives you a lot of empathy for students walk into a classroom with so much baggage. And as the tutor, as a learning advisor, you will never know what that baggage is. You can only hope that when it gets really bad, that they reach out and help. And for success, it's just been talking to as many people as possible. It's been making friends. It's been making mentors. It's been chatting with my tutors after class and just, talking about the subjects, reading the books, like actually reading the readings. It's crazy how, like, when I first started uni, straight after high school, I would do anything to not read any reading. I would rather the lengths I went to not do like simple tasks was so much more impressive than if I had just done. And it's actually crazy because like I'm putting so much extra effort into procrastinating. It's actually quite impressive the level of procrastination I've reached, but it's not really helping. And obviously I would fail courses and then I eventually dropped out. And so I think like you have to do real soul searching to be successful as a student into why are you resisting this assignment to the point where you're giving yourself so much stress and not completing it. Like, why are you doing that? Oh, it's because, you got to do soul searching. So I think there's a lot of, it's a two-way street, like that relationship between student and learning advisor, student and educator. I really think you have to have a level of trust in the student that they will be able to like work through it, but also have the empathy to see they're struggling. I'm gonna go over and say, hey, do you want to have a chat about this? Like, I think that's really helpful whenever I've had tutors just reach out by email and be like, if it's a stressful time, you can request an extension. Just like those little human interactions, they make success flourish. Like, just reminding you that unis are communities and that it's up to you how much you engage with that. But when you do, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful community.
It's interesting. Again, I think the common theme from the five of you is that you've found that once you've reached out and communicated with someone and talked about this, it's been a successful venture for you, which is great to hear. And it sounds like you're selling the virtue of a gap year. So I think that's a pretty good idea myself. I think there's a lot to be said for that. Do we have anything in chat, Alice? Any questions coming up in the in the chat?
There was just one point brought up that I noticed that this group is full of returning to study students, and whether the experience would be different for those who are going straight on from high school to uni instead.
Yeah, I wonder because we've got Carly, who sounds like she came straight out of, at least the first time, out of high school and didn't find that worked for her, and then came back. And then Wesley, who came as a more experienced student. And it seems like there's a full continuum of experiences within that, uh, as it sounds like. So I guess there's always going to be things happening, as Carly really correctly pointed out to us, in the background that we sometimes see and are visible to us and are sometimes absolutely not visible to us, and we don't know what's going on. So it's that challenge of meeting the student where they need to be met. So talking about some of those barriers then, let's flip the narrative a little bit. And the second question from me is, what then general barriers or hurdles have you faced in relation to study success or university success? And by that I mean, what things might have been or are holding you back or not working for you? So Carly has probably talked about this already, and talking about her efforts to procrastinate far in energy terms outweighed her efforts to get stuff done. So that was maybe one thing that she might talk about more. I don't know. But what have been limiters to you? Sally, I think I started with you last time, didn't I? I'll start with Katie this time then.
Okay, so limiters for me is I began as a mature age student. I came in, like Kelly was sort of saying, I didn't actually ever think when I was completing high school that I'd be a university student. I came with my baggage of I'm not smart enough, I won't even get in. Then when I got there and started studying, I absolutely loved the content. So I found that the grades came really easy to me. And I was a little bit like, people are not engaging. Why don't they care? Like, we're paying for this. So barriers for me, I guess, were managing my own really high expectations of myself, and trying to connect with people which had different learning experiences to myself. For me, I found that other people just seem to get things so easily. Like, it would be like, answer this question and off they'd go. Whereas for myself, I'm like a researcher. I need to have all the information, know absolutely everything about it, and then I can begin work, which, like, I've noticed that takes me a lot of time. So maybe it's procrastination, but it's also like I would put in way above and beyond the effort that I would need to, to get the task done. And then I would distract myself. Like, I would find something bright and shiny and I'd be off down that rabbit hole. And then suddenly I'd be writing about that. And I'd get my assignment back and they're like, it's interesting, but you haven't answered the question. Don't care. So my barriers, I guess, have been like honing in. I seem to do better at the units that I'm less interested in, maybe out of boredom, because I just answer the question, than those that I absolutely love. I do tend to sort of go off a little bit. So once I knew that there were services there, I think I sat quietly for the first semester or so, just thinking, oh my God, everyone's going to think that I'm stupid if I ask too many questions. I'll just sit here and soak it up. But when I became that person that did seek out support, things improved a lot, because it was understanding like what was expected of me, coming from like not doing high school for 20 odd years or whatever. And then the first assessment, like, I had to understand how to read a rubric. I had to understand that you don't start your marks at like 100% and then lose them. You actually start the pass point and then you gain marks by doing extra. It was things like when they say a minimum of this amount of references, they actually mean double it, So all those very things, like back when I was in high school, we didn't even have rubrics. We didn't have the information. And then some of my units provided like exemplars. So previous students' work of like, here's what the end product looked like. Fantastic. And I'm like, okay, I get that. So, for myself, it was more just like coming in and not knowing what was expected, being really keen, but then not really understanding. So And then I think some of the barriers were our website's so huge. There's so much information in there from like academic skills people. Like you can go in and they're like, "It's here," but you don't actually know where to find the information that you need. You don't know what you need if you don't know that it exists. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was a barrier for me is like, okay, where do I even start to find that info?
Oh, that's completely understandable. I often talk about information at university, at least our university. I wonder if Cortina agrees. It's like drinking from the fire hose. There's no way you can absorb everything that's coming out and going across the students. It's no wonder students say, "Well, I didn't know about that." How about Cortina? How about you? What are some barriers that you've found?
I think probably the two that I think of, one might be initially attempting to go at it alone, and the second would be not knowing where things were. And I'd say for the first one, what I found is that, in particular with the graduate diploma, it's you're kind of coming in with a group that has actually already done a previous diploma, but is interested in psychology, or maybe they I think we have one case of somebody who actually had it was coming from high school into the graduate diploma because they're a mature student. But once I found a group of people to study with and have accountability with
Mm.
and form that community, absolutely. I think it was Kelly that was saying that I thought that was one of the best things because then it becomes fun. You also can be a bit more efficient about the work. Like we're quite organized with the way we divide up the lectures and what we'll present to each other on the lectures. And that's been incredibly helpful. Plus, you have that community to commiserate with, but then also individuals who are encouraging you as well. I
Mm.
found that to be invaluable to know, oh, and that actually gave me the motivation to then go out and look for resources because it wasn't a, oh, wait, the problem's me. It's like, oh no, everyone else is experiencing this too. Ah, okay, now let me go out and see if I can find a solution for it. And I'm almost hesitant to even say, mention something that would be useful for academic skills because what I'm finding is every time I look for something, it actually is there. I think there is something related to like the library. They're willing to help you find references on topics. I didn't even know that was a resource, but that's
Mm.
incredibly invaluable if you're spending all this time. So the only thing that had come to my mind as because of that barrier is they have these sessions which are called PAL sessions that are put on by the Graduate Student Association, which I really love because that's also a form of community. Everyone's coming together to prepare in advance for the exam. And it crossed my mind at one point because these study sessions are so successful that even having a combination of that with, and it might exist already, but a combination of that with, I think they call it Shut Up and Write, where people
Mm.
come together just to write. And I
Mm.
thought it'd be really interesting if they had something where it's just sit down and study. And
Yeah.
then you had someone from academic skills walking around. So if you had a question about, hey, is there like, how would you advise that I kind of go after this particular topic? Am I studying in the right way? Then someone's there to just answer questions really quickly.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So
It,
yeah,
yeah.
it's like, how do you, as you're going through it, find out what resources might be available for the thing that you need and get that advice. And if I'm on campus, I can go into the library, I can kind of talk to someone and say, hey, how can I find this? But I wondered as well whether there's something on Zoom where someone's available on Zoom, where if you just need to quickly ask a question, you can get someone on Zoom instantly. That'd be really interesting. So it's like a virtual model of the same thing if you can't get into campus.
I've made notes of this. Okay. And again, you're speaking to the socially mediated aspect of learning, which is great to hear that you've found success doing that with other people, which is really, really good to hear. It's really validating. Thanks, Cortina. Carly, how about you? What are some of the barriers, do you think?
One glaring barrier I remember was I enrolled in 2020, and so a couple of months in March, the
Ah,
pandemic started.
COVID. Yeah, right.
And so uni went on, but it went on online. And so doing a performing arts course online through Zoom was so bizarre. That was a huge barrier. Just like, how are you going to perform as a group on Zoom? That was, you could make a comedy series about it. It was so bizarre. But that was a huge one. And also, I think something changed in classrooms after COVID, sort of after we were allowed to go back into classrooms. I don't know, it's like you had to rebuild that sense of community again.
Mm.
And So that was a bit of a barrier. And then other barriers I resonated to what you said, Katie, about like the horror of a silent classroom when no one will ask any questions is like it hurts me on a soul level. It hurts me because it's just you have this tutor who usually like I'm closer in age with the tutor than the students next to me, and they're putting they're doing their job, but they also have it's their vocation, so there is passion in the voice, and to be met with a silent classroom is really hard. And so, and I understand why students are silent. Like, I remember being that young and in the classroom and not wanting to say anything because I thought, I'm going to look stupid. I'm going to get the wrong answer. And bystander effect of if people aren't doing it, I'm not doing it. But that's a huge barrier to stay motivated because then you get into the groove of, well, I didn't learn anything in that class because no one said anything. So I'm just not going to go to class. And then you think, well, I'm not going to go to class. So I'm not going to go to the next class. And then you end up like missing a whole semester, failing the class. It's a story that like I've heard a lot of friends of mine go through as well. They just think at a certain point, like, I'm not going to go, it's useless. And they say that about a class that has a whole topic and they're not coming at it from a mean perspective. They just haven't. There is mental resistance there that I think when you come back to uni, you have that greater appreciation for education and the subjects that you're learning. So you don't have that resistance anymore. So you're very happy to engage. And it's tough, that dissonance between the apathetic class and the passionate tutor. It's weird. Like you feel like you have to pick a side sometimes, but it's also been so beautiful seeing the tutors that can sort of massage the class into being more outgoing. You see that most in honestly the performing arts courses, where in Uni SA, I think we're the only uni in South Australia right now that has a no audition performing arts major. So you don't have to audition to pursue your performing arts major at Uni SA, which is incredible for people like me who have no acting experience. And I don't really have a desire to go into acting. I wanted to be a more confident person. And seeing how those tutors can get the most like motley crew of students on a stage, force them to sing and just be like, you want to be the passive student. Now you are the subject. Now you are my lesson now. But doing it in a kind way, it can break that. But I don't know how you do that in other courses. I don't know how you do that in psychology. Maybe it's you have to, I think sometimes even just getting students to stand up briefly at the beginning of the class and like stretch and then stretch throughout the class. It gets you talking. And I think that is the biggest barrier always. The silent classroom is scary. So I would say that's my barrier.
Yes, it can be very difficult. I faced one at 3:30 on last Friday afternoon, which maybe more about the time. Okay, Wesley, barriers to learning.
But I've written a note there. I went to University of South Australia. Used to be a college, and I went to Underdale campus, right? A year 1981, right? And it had an Indigenous unit there too. We have one here. All the universities now have one. And the one thing you see that like every single time all these kids start, A, they're the first one ever to go to university, they're terrified, right? Then B, they're often have generational trauma. I'm not going to go into it. We all know what that is, right? And they're quite broken, but excited to be at school, but it's terrifying. They get scared and they run away at enormous rates, right? But not because they failed, because they just want to go home, And I spoke to everybody, SA, Flinders, UTS here, Sydney, and every one of the directors said the same thing. If we had an in-house counsellor, it would help enormously, like a school counsellor. They have in high schools. It doesn't have to be a clinical psychologist. You know what I mean?
There's no such service at your institution.
Well, there is, but you have to go to the unit to do it. It wouldn't work for Indigenous students. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I mean, they can get free psychology, everything, but they're not going to go there.
Yeah.
You want someone in these units where they hang out, who's there and they're familiar with, who is black too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean by that? Because it's that they feel so other, if you know what I mean. And it actually finds daunting. And I've been there, I've had that experience, It's fucking terrifying. Sorry, I swore. I'm really sorry I
It's
swore.
okay.
I apologize.
No, no, not at all. Do you feel there's been any strides made forward in this space in terms of trying not to have Indigenous students at university
Or
feel othered?
UTS had one for a while, then she resigned, but they didn't bring one back. They just said they'd have one now, right? So what I'm saying, that's four of the main units in Australia I spoke to personally, and all of them said, glaringly, obviously, we need in-house counsellors, because
Right.
those kids keep running home because it's too much. And
Yeah.
they are traumatized. You don't realize what kind of lifestyle backgrounds they got. Their socioeconomic background is nothing like any of you. Sorry, that's me presuming you're all reasonably middle class. But most black people aren't middle class. They're barely working class.
Yeah. Yeah.
Their
Okay.
parents didn't even graduate from high school. It's a
Yeah.
huge thing, right?
Yeah.
My mum went to grade one, my grad went to grade three. And I was the first to go to uni as well when I went. You know what I mean? Like it's like that for everybody. It's the most common thing in all these units. The dropout rate because of that is huge. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It could be you were saying, well, how can the university facilitate learning? Well, obviously, the goal of the university is to get more graduates, right? And so, if you had that person in place, it's not expensive because it's not a clinical psychologist, so it is doable. And
Mm.
that's what they all said. They said, if I could say that, they would love me forever. So I'm saying it. And it is
Well,
first-hand. I did actually ring them and talk to them.
good. Yeah.
Mm.
For what it's worth, it's being heard, at least by this group.
Yeah.
And I think you'll find you have a very sympathetic or empathetic set of ears here, that's for sure. Okay, good point. Thanks, Wesley. Sally, over to you. Barriers. I think you're on mute, Sally.
Sorry, Zoom's decided to push buttons. I think that something that most people have sort of picked up on already is around like identity theory and how students need to build an identity as a student, especially for those of us that are sort of mature age and returning to study and do have to balance that with work and family and all of those other commitments as well. I noticed that especially as studying by distance education, really trying to find ways to build my identity as a student so that I could really take that on and get the most out of my studies was one of the big barriers. But I think the second level for me was really around knowing how to be a student. So I am the first in my family to graduate high school, to go to university. I didn't, the process of being a student is complex and unfamiliar, and it's really hard to know where to go. And sometimes you might reach out and try and approach someone, but that's the wrong person. And instead of being pointed in the direction, it's kind of like, no, not here, full stop. So I think really supporting new students, and especially students who don't have that background of further education in their family as well, is a big part of it. And the layer that complicated that, I think, more for me was being a student with disability. It was often really complicated to know, is this a disability issue? Like, do I go to access and wellbeing for this, or do I go to the library? Do I go to academic skills? Do I go to the teaching staff? Like, where does this fit in the realm of all of the services? And sometimes I wonder whether having, our disability services separated out instead of integrated into is helping students, or if it's just adding another layer of complexity that maybe could be reconsidered and looked at in a different way.
Right. It's so interesting that Carly, Wesley, and you, Sally, have all talked about the assumptions that people make when working with students. And what you just said then really resonated with me, that we sort of make this assumption, well, I do, I won't speak for everybody, that students coming in know how to student. They know the basics of studenting, studenting 101, you've got it and you're ready to go. And you're telling us, and you're right, you're totally right, is not everyone does. And so even someone like, say, for Cortina, very accomplished, coming from a different background, a different educational culture, she needs to reorient, right? So it's people coming at it from so many different angles, which I hope our services accommodate that. That's what I hope we're doing. I think we are. We're trying. So that's my sort of final question. We've zipped through 46 minutes incredibly quickly for me anyway. Can you each give us a brief snapshot, and Cortina, you've already done this, but about your intersections with a service like ours? If you just want to say anything, because the room is mostly full of academic advisors, what have your intersections been like? Sally, you might as well keep talking. You've got the floor already.
Yeah, I think once I learned how to articulate what I needed, my all of my experiences were really positive, but sometimes it can take a little while to form those words, even with someone who's got, you know, a 20-year history in representative advocacy. It took me a while to be able to find the words to express what it was that I needed. And they're not big things, they're quite simple things, but it's around, you know, using certain types of descriptive language and not others. And so I think part of the role is, yeah, supporting students to work out what it is that they need so that they can also use that language in other areas of their study as well. And once I got that, my interactions were really positive.
It's interesting. And again, you all keep talking about this, but in slightly different ways. It's the decoding of the system, isn't it?
Yeah,
That unlocks. Wesley, yeah, is that for you too?
absolutely.
Can you, Wesley? Well, you can keep going. What are how have you found your intersections with services like ours? You talked about the hub before,
Yeah,
I think.
I'll try to be quick because we're running out of time. Mine's really positive. I've said what I said about the Indigenous students. They really mean that. That's quite a strong thing for me. Um, I'm not going to go into the foreign students. I will talk about these services. I currently interact with disability, the writing hub, because I'm doing creative writing, right?
Mm.
And my mentor comes out of that, and also the learning hub, and they're remarkable. And mine's really positive. You know, like they are so accommodating, and I've learned so much in such a short time. And like I said, I'm getting distinctions and high distinctions with very little effort. Because of, because of the way they taught me to look at it as a whole and break it down. You know,
Yeah.
you think I should know that at my age, but just to have it simple, a little bit like I said, studenting, you know. And even if, you know, my bibliography, I should sit there and write that stupid thing out when I can just cut and paste little tiny things where I can just cut and paste it. Do you know what I mean? Like that
Yeah.
sounds so stupid.
No, it's
Yeah.
not. It's not. The nuts and bolts stuff is
Yeah, it's the nuts and bolts stuff that you
it
don't
adds
know.
up. Oh, mate, no.
Yeah.
That's academia runs on the nuts and
Yeah,
bolts.
yeah. I'm sorry that sounds a bit stupid, but yeah.
No, it's not. It's not at all. Katie, how about you? Intersections with services.
So yeah, I'm involved with as many services as I can get. I go with the more eyes on your work is better. Like you will always receive some feedback from somebody that other people haven't seen. So our equity and diversity team are fantastic at my university. The learning advisors are brilliant. They're always there and they're available. The only thing that I found is sometimes it's school specific. So I might attend a drop-in session, but they're like, well, I don't know anything about legislation. Go
Oh,
somewhere else. So again, it's like the drop-in sessions that are there, they might have a mixture of like nursing students, psych students, counselling, and it's all very busy, very overwhelming. You're sort of sitting at tables and waiting to be seen. So the one-on-one sessions that I book in, like a half an hour slot, you can make an appointment. They're a lot more effective for me. However, they're limited. They're like, oh, you can only do one a week. I'm like, what is more questions? So, yeah, for me, it's self-advocacy has been hard, like actually explaining, oh, this is what I want or this is what I need. But once I've found a bit of confidence with that and being comfortable with my own learning style, and just sort of embracing that, it's been easier to ask what I need.
okay.
We also, yeah, get a lot of like assistive tech and support with systems and sort of like recording software or highlighting software, which has helped me a lot. So I guess, yeah, it's just knowing where to ask for the help.
Okay. And the help being able to meet you where you're at. I think that sounds like a clear message. So thanks for that. Carly, how about you?
I'll think of a recent example. This year, I did a short-term study exchange, and it was inspired and it was what's the word, mentioned to me at first by learning advisors. And I was discovering feelings of feeling a bit listless in my studies. I wasn't thinking of dropping out, but I was just a bit burnt out from the year before. And I just basically unloaded my wants and needs. And they were like, have you considered study exchange? And then I went to Japan and it was the best time of my life. So I would say you can even go to these services with, it doesn't have to just be the nuts and bolts of like, I have a question about this you can as a person say, I am feeling disillusioned by my degree, my course, what I'm experiencing right now. Do you have any advice? Like what, because I don't know what the uni offers. I don't know the all the systems in place. And when they said that, that was exactly the solve I needed. And it was, from a learning advisor of all people, like it wasn't a counselor or anything. So I think, just
I like the of all people you added there.
Of all people, yeah.
Fancy us doing that. Well done.
I didn't know that was offered, so
no. It's okay.
I thought that was sweet.
We have a great capacity to laugh at ourselves here. Cortina, how about you? I think you've made it fairly clear about your successes, and that's been really great. How did you find out about? I don't think I even ever asked you that question. How did you find out about ourselves? How did you know to interact with the service from the start?
It was from another student, and I'd heard about the service. I knew it was there, but I just kind of discounted it. But when I was talking to another student and they said they were heading off for an appointment, I said, "Oh, why are you doing that?" And they're like, "Oh, I always do. It's fabulous." I said, "Really?" And then they were explaining the level of support that could be provided. So I feel like that's my takeaway has just been I like to cook a lot. And with cooking, there's this thing called mise en place, which means everything in its place.
Yeah.
So I started applying that to studying and the studying process. And I'm finding when I think about it in that way, and I'm really open and saying, okay, and I'll share with people, here's how I'm doing this, here's how I'm doing that. And I'll talk with people about how they do it. And I always find that there's a more efficient way to get something done or a better way.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It's great. Yeah.
A trick, right? Like a tip or a technique or something. I think that the nuance with that is because I tend to approach things with an I don't know mindset, where I'm actually really happy to say I don't know, because that's my biggest lesson. There's so much more to learn. Being met by somebody who recognizes when I'm asking, I don't know, it's not because I'm stupid. I'm asking because I'm actually smart enough to want to find a better way to do something. So I think that being met with empathy then encourages you to continue in that. But if you're ever met with the person who is saying, sorry, not here, or can't help you, right? That can be quite discouraging.
Yeah.
And then people don't want to ask for help because they don't think they're going to be treated well. But that hasn't been my experience. I feel like it's just been fabulous. So it's encouraging me to continue seeking support.
Oh, great. That's really good to hear that's been a validating and positive experience. That's fantastic. And you're right. If that initial exposure or experience isn't a good one, you might tend to say, well, I'm not going back there again. So
I've heard that from other students, Steve. Actually, it's really important. Like if that first touch point isn't positive, they won't ever go back because they're so busy and so stressed and they were just trialing it. But if it is great, then they're like, oh my goodness, let me keep doing this.
That makes total sense. Yeah, absolutely. Alice, we got a couple of questions off the chat that you fished out, I believe.
Yes, there's one way back in the chat. Someone said we generally offer our consultations in public places like the library or study hub at a service desk next to other student services. Students can choose a private space if they prefer. So do the students have any views on what kind of space they'd like to have consultations in? Do they mind having a public space or would they prefer private space?
Anybody can answer.
For me, private would be, because I know as soon as I talk about my feelings, I start crying. And the idea of that being a public space terrifies me.
Yeah.
And I think like those confessional spaces should be in a safe, like kind of bubble space. I think it's better for everyone if it's in a confessional kind of space, because it is, you're divulging something, you're giving, like, you're being vulnerable with someone. It's, you don't want an audience for that.
And also not too much background noise. If there's a lot happening in the background, I'm not concentrating on what you're saying. I can't filter out sound, which means I can listen to the 7 other conversations and the truck reversing and the cutlery, and it's not going to sink in.
And same from, at least as an advisor, from my perspective, I can't concentrate if there's other stuff going around me. I'm quite sensitive with my hearing. Cortina, Katie, Wesley, any comments from you on that? The public space, the private space?
I like having the option of the private space for the reasons that others have said. And then I think it's always nice if maybe it is just something quick and casual where you can just walk over to someone and say, "Oh, I was just wondering about this," and they can point you in the right direction. But often for the longer conversations, I think somewhere private is quite good because of those reasons.
Well, at Sydney, sorry, I didn't put my hand up. At
Go
Sydney,
ahead.
I have to access a lot of services. I just told you that I tick all the boxes, and there's private rooms for everything. Like no matter where you are, no matter what you're getting, it's a private room. It's never done with another student right there. Even doing coaching, they do it privately. They manage it. I don't know how they do it. Well, we have 61,000 students, and yet we still get a private room for those services. Do you know what I mean? Like Learning Hub or Writing Hub or disability, any of those, all private. And the counselling is obviously private. So I don't have the experience about what Katina was saying about. Who was saying about there are other people there? You know what I mean?
Yeah, just sometimes people have drop-in services, some institutions where they're conducted, for example, in a public space in the library. We do most of ours at Melbourne through Zoom, which I personally find as an advisor really works. Like I don't really like Zoom workshops, but I love Zoom one-to-ones because it feels like you're looking at each other, you're face to face. It might sound counterintuitive, but it feels right to me. Look, it's 1:57, and I know it's only a couple of minutes, but just throwing the floor open. Does anybody want to ask our wonderful students anything else about while we have them here? You can put a virtual hand up or just unmute yourself.
I can't see everybody. I've only got 4 people on top.
That's okay, mate. There's about 50 at the moment, Wesley. So
sorry.
yeah. There's people listening to you. Don't worry. It's also being
That wasn't
recorded.
my
There'll be other
concern.
people listening to your wise words of wisdom
It
after
wasn't
the
my
event.
concern. I was just saying what I could see.
Look, I think if no one has any questions, I will take this opportunity. Really, really huge thank you to Sally, Cortina, Carly, Katie, and Wesley for coming in today. I've found this fascinating. I love hearing about the student experience. I feel that our services that we all offer at the various places in Australia feel, to me, it validated. We're doing good things. And yet there's things we need to be aware of. Some of the barriers that some of the students raised today, particularly in first and family, Indigenous, people coming in without feeling up to it or confident. We have to keep those things in mind. So I really thank you for, as you said, sharing vulnerabilities and really appreciate it. Before I go, we have our symposium. That's our last event for the year on December the 6th. We would love to have a huge number of people there. So I'll be sending that invitation out in the next week or so. But everybody, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Students, do you want to stay on the line for just a minute longer while everyone pops out? You can unmute yourselves now.
Okay.
Hey, that was great, you guys. Thank you. That was fantastic. Really, really good.
I really enjoyed hearing everyone's experiences.
Yeah.
That was actually great for me as well.
Oh,
It just
me
made
too.
me feel like that connection that I think someone else was talking about as well. Just there's so many different experiences and needs and challenges that are worth accommodating and being aware of. And then they're all different. We're all coming from very different situations.
And that's the thing that strikes me every time is that, you talk to 2 students, there's 2 different perspectives going on. You talk to 5, there's 5 different perspectives going on. I'll talk to 100, there's 100 different perspectives going on. There's always another angle, like what Carly was saying about the grudge with education. I thought, wow, that's powerful. It really is, because it's not something you think about, right?
Yeah.
Like if someone's coming in with a visible disability, I can think about that. I can see it. I can engage with it. But you're talking about something which is by its nature hidden and not obvious. right? And whether you want to talk about or disclose, it's going to be up to you, of course, or up to me to sort of ascertain it. But gee,
Yeah. Or whether you even know you have that grudge,
yeah.
is, as a student, I found that the same thing because
Oh, right. Whether you know about it yourself.
yeah, because I come from immigrant parents and I learned English quite late in life. And because I'm white and I look Australian, people just assumed I was stupid when I was growing up. And it was because I'm learning the language. Like it's because
Wow.
I speak a different language at home. And you hold that grudge of like you feel stupid in a classroom setting. Why would I actively go
Yeah.
to university? Like I hate this space. This space makes me feel stupid. And then you need to like you get some breathing room and you do some nice things for yourself and you heal and then you realize no, this is a wound and I will, I can heal it in a way. So
That is, yeah, that look, no, that's very powerful, I think, for educators to hear things like that and those type of stories. And even, you know, uh, in terms of someone like when Cortina was coming to me and saying, but I haven't done that before that way. I didn't realize that, or is that how you do this? And they're like, oh, okay. So, all right, you're coming from a different thing. This is assumption, right? That someone's coming in from an English speaking system, right? That they know what to do, right? And then she's saying, no, no, I don't know what to do. Okay, well, let's go back. Let's take it couple of steps back. It's not a problem. We can do this, but this is how we want to do it from here. So again, just you talked about assumptions, and you're so right that we have a set of assumptions when someone's sitting there opposite us about what they bring to the learning context, and sometimes they're completely wrong. Or things you didn't even consider, right? Things you didn't even consider, as you said.
Yeah.
Cortina, you have to go. Okay, bye, Cortina. Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Yeah. Look, I just wanted to say thank you. I won't hold you guys here much longer. Hi, Hui Fang. Glad you made it. Alex is here and Sue's here. Thank you, committee. Thanks, Alice. Look, I think I'll let you go. Have your afternoon cup of coffee and stuff.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Talk to
you.
you later then.
Thanks
Bye.
again.
To everyone.
Bye.
See
Bye bye.
ya.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.